What position group is the most anticipated in your mind, John? In other words, it's got to get better. It's got to improve. It's got to establish itself in order for Tennessee to have a successful 2024.
Well, I think the first position group anybody thinks about in terms of needing an upgrade is the secondary. And I think you can put enjoying linebackers with that. Keenan Pili was hurt last year, didn't play, started one game. That was it. Transfer from BYU. He's got a nice resume. They expect him to be a team leader and sort of a defensive anchor, but he hadn't done anything yet. And the secondary, as always, that's been a concern ever since Josh Heupel came here. Tennessee has struggled in that area, and we'll see if the transfer portal can resolve that problem. But I think that as you go through fall camp and then you get into that first game against Chattanooga, you'd really like to see that group come on strong and develop some solid players because the NC State game could be a challenge in game 2.
Caleb, when we look at the returning starters, there's no arguing with John. That would be a major concern if you didn't know anything about this team. But we've also had Josh Heupel tout this secondary and what they might be able to do. He seems more confident with a bunch of new guys that might have more physical ability than a bunch of guys that he knew weren't that great.
Yeah, far be it from me to take a head coach at his word. But I will say the way Josh Heupel spoke at SEC Media Days last week when he was asked about, or 2 weeks ago now, when he was asked specifically about a secondary, and he goes right into, this is the deepest I've ever had the roster. It seemed like a direct reference to the secondary. I like the transfers they brought in, most notably Jacoby Thomas at free safety and Jermon McCoy at cornerback.
Well, and he even did bring up the secondary unquestioned. So, yes.
Yeah, exactly. So I think he's very excited about it to a point that because of the way Tennessee is constructed and because of what they need to make their offense go, I would actually have more concern about the running back situation than I would their secondary, because I'm not sure they have that feature back that can get 20 carries the way a Jalen Wright or Jabari Small did, that can pick up pass pro, because Dylan Sampson can't do that. And if they don't have that, the offense doesn't go. People think about all the big plays of the Heupel offense, but again, those big plays aren't there if they're not sticking to the running game consistently. And I don't know if they have the running back that they can do that with yet.
Well, John, how concerned are you about those running backs?
Well, I'm concerned about the depth. I don't think you can ever have enough running backs in the SEC. I would like to go in a season with 4 proven running backs. I know that sounds greedy, but we see the attrition at that position. You'll go into a season and see some roster and some depth chart, and it's loaded with good running backs, proven guys, but they fall by the wayside very quickly because of injuries. I view Tennessee's running back situation strictly from a depth perspective being a problem. I think Dylan Sampson will be a star. I think he'll rush for more yards than Jabari Small and Jalen Wright did. I think he has the potential to me to lead the SEC in rushing. He rushed for about 130 yards on 20 carries against Iowa in the bowl game, and I look for him to have a big year. Running backs, if he can stay healthy, but running backs usually produce big numbers in Josh Heupel's offense, and I think Sampson will again. As far as getting back to the secondary, and yeah, Heupel is talking up his secondary, but what else is he supposed to do? He can't say, "Oh my God, I can't believe here we go again." I have nightmares about these guys, and I agree with. I mean, losing 6 DBs to the transfer portal is like addition by subtraction. I mean, how much better could those guys be? Yeah, they're coming back. They're coming back to give up more yards. So I wouldn't lament that loss. And it seems like he got some solid players who've done okay elsewhere, but it's not as though he got a first team all-conference player, a star player in the secondary. I think it's an upgrade, and I think it'll be better. And maybe Ricky Gibson, who's already on the roster, will become a really good player. I don't know about that yet, but at least there's a chance to be hopeful. With that last bunch, you knew what was coming, and it wasn't good. So,
No.
and I wonder, though, with Heupel, and you guys know this, when coaches in preseason are talking about how good, boy, that guy's come on strong. This guy looks better than ever. We're really excited about what he could do this year. Sometimes it's just like wishful thinking, like, and also trying to imbue the guy with confidence. Like, man, we really need you to get better. Please get better. Oh my gosh, you got to get better. So sometimes it's wishful thinking.
There's a lot to that. It's funny, we haven't mentioned the biggest name in Tennessee's camp in terms of the most anticipated, impactful position, but we are talking about a first-year starter who's only started one game in this guy. Also won games. I remind you that John's appearance is brought to you by our good friends at Newbert Collision Center.
5th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. If you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Now, before I jump to that Nico guy, do want to ask you on the defensive side of the ball, how good do they have to be, John? Because we've seen Tennessee win 10 games when their pass defense was rated towards the bottom of the SEC. I want to ask both of you. I'll start with John. How good do they have to be? Just kind of good, really good, dominant?
Well, I'm not suggesting Tennessee needs shut-down corners. But what it has to do, I think, in this defensive scheme and with this offense is get some turnovers and make some plays back there. Even in past seasons, we've seen that. We saw that in 2022, where some guys stepped up and made interceptions that really impacted a game. Down after down, they might not have played as well as you like, but they did make plays, and I think that's crucial. Turnovers are crucial. You expect Tennessee to score a bunch of points, and in some cases being high scoring games. But if you can force some turnovers, yeah, maybe you do give up a touchdown ever so often, maybe more often than you would like. But if you can balance that with making interceptions, I think it could pay off. So, but the bottom line, it just needs to be better overall.
Yeah, I'm with John on that. I think that's the big thing. And even in 2022, I mean, let's not forget, like 2022, they did give up a touchdown every single drive when they faced South Carolina. I still don't think I've ever seen a defense do that. But I think that's why I rated the running backs a bigger concern than the secondary, was because I don't think the secondary has to be good. I think the running backs actually have to be good in this system. And again, John, you did bring up Sampson, but I still don't think you can keep Dylan Sampson out there every down. I mean, you can't have a running back that can't block a guy on a blitz, and Dylan Sampson can't block for anything.
Well, to address that, we're talking about preseason talk. I read one quote from Josh Heupel talking about how Sampson has improved as a blocker. He's confident in him as a blocker. That may, again, relate to wishful thinking. And I know there was that flagrant missed block in the Citrus Bowl. I mean, I'm not sitting there grading running backs on how well they're blocking.
That's what Caleb does.
Yeah, Caleb is there with – okay. I'm not saying he does, but I think he's watching a lot of video. Dylan Sampson, to me, though, has game-breaking potential as a running back. And he might give up some missed blocks, but I think he can really make big plays in this offense. So I might be higher on him than you are.
I think I'm somewhere in between you guys. Work trucks because Dylan puts in the work. He just can't truck people because he's not that big at just 200 pounds, maybe. But work trucks, all about the trucks. They are actually available trucks that help you maximize your profits by having the right vehicle now. Time is money. The perfect work vehicle doesn't break down, and has all the space you need to carry everything you need to get the job done. Work Trucks is intent on offering you the trucks that other dealership can't. Contract is about time. Work Trucks saves you time with less back and forth. The Napide work bodies installed. They've got the cranes. They've got the dump trucks as well. If you're a contractor, you need Work Trucks with an X, LLC.com. Work Trucks with an LLC.com with an X. Work Trucks, LLC.com. Clinton Highway, downtown Birmingham. That's Work Trucks. The player that we have not talked about, that we seem to all have a lot of confidence in, is Nico Iamaleava. Curious, do we have too much confidence in Nico? Because a lot of people on the outside would say you're just expecting him to step in and be better than Joe Milton. Well, that was the kind of talk about Joe Milton in reference to Hendon Hooker. John, so if somebody wants to sit on the outside and say you guys are already too confident about Nico, I can't argue with them. I would say based off what I've heard, they're wrong, but I can't argue with them.
No, I go with the eye test on Nico. I think he's going to be a superstar.
Me too.
I'll trust my track record on that. But you go back to last year, and that's a really good point because, again, we talk about preseason discussion. And I remember Tennessee's media day last year, both Josh Heupel and Joey Halsley, the offensive coordinator. Halsley made Joe Milton out to be a high draft pick, high first-round draft pick. I mean, everything. Command of the offense, how he studied, his approach is so much better, all this kind of stuff. It made him sound like just a star waiting to happen. Instead, we got pretty much the same Joe Milton we'd seen in the past, where there were ups and downs, too many downs, really, and he didn't really fit this offense. But again, getting back to the preseason hype, I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of difference in the way they talked about Joe Milton as how they're talking about Nico now. But I've seen both these guys. I mean, I had questions about Joe Milton in this offense from the very first game I saw him against Bowling Green. So, yeah, but I don't have those questions with Nico. And it's not just us. It's not just people in the Tennessee camp saying, oh, Nico's going to be great. Check the Heisman odds. I've seen him as fifth in the Heisman. For a guy that's never been a full-time starter, he has one college start. So that's not coming from Tennessee media or inside the Tennessee camp. That's coming from people who put money on this.
Yeah, John.
You're usually right too, Caleb.
Yeah, John, I'm with you. And I mean, the Citrus Bowl kind of erased all my doubts. I was sold on Nico beforehand. I'm sold on him now. I was fine keeping him on the bench last year until he got in football shape. I was okay with that. That was the plan. They wanted the smooth transition. One of the only things that's bothering me, Vegas and FanDuel they're putting Nico at fifth at Heisman odds, but they're setting Tennessee's win total at 8.5. If Nico's going to New York, Tennessee is certainly winning more than 8.5 games this year. And I don't understand that because of the fact that, like, they went 9-4 last year and 11-2 in 2022. Most experts believe that, and Vegas too, that with Nico, they're going to look more like the 2022 team. But people think their on-field win-loss record is going to look more like the 2023 team. I don't get that.
That's a good point. I look at it. I mean, I look at Tennessee as I don't see it. I guess I would set it higher. I would say over and under on a win total, I would say 9.5.
Sure.
And here's, go back to last year. Dayton Daniels won the Heisman Trophy. LSU lost 3 games. So, and he was a great player. I voted for him. I mean, and just an incredible numbers he put up. I just think there's a chance if Nico could stay healthy that he will put up dazzling numbers in this offense. And so if you can combine the dazzling stats with a pretty good record, not great, but pretty good. Ideally, you'd like to see 10-2 to get you to New York as a finalist, but 9-3 could get you there if you rush for 1,000 yards and pass for 3,500. If you do, bottom line, what Jaden Daniels could do last year.
Caleb, I guess I'm going to differ a little bit. I think that Nico could have an incredible top of year and be a Heisman invitee, finalist, whatever we want to call it, actually get the invite to New York. And with an unknown secondary, maybe they could be a 9-3 football team. But I mean, I can see an opportunity for that. But the bottom line is, if you consider Nico at the end of the year one of the top 3, 4, 5 best players, it's hard for me to imagine Tennessee not being one of the top 12 teams making the college football playoff. And really, guys, more like along the lines of top 8, top 6 type of teams, if Nico is a top 3 or 4 or 5 player.
Yeah, I agree. It's hard to the consensus is that Joe Milton was not a fit for this offense last year, and that's why they went 8-4 instead of repeat 2022. If that's the case, and if Nico is, the idea that they wouldn't repeat 2022 is just absolutely mind-boggling, particularly when, as we're about to talk about, like there are some position units that I think we know are going to be better next year. They dealt with some injuries last year.